The stars stretched out like an endless canvas, twinkling with the promise of mysteries yet to be unraveled. Captain Aurora Lyons stood at the helm of the Infinity, staring out into the vast expanse of space. She could feel the weight of her responsibility on her shoulders as the crew prepared for their most daring mission yet. The year was 2346, and humanity had long ago established a foothold in the stars. The Infinity, one of Earth's most advanced exploration vessels, was tasked with charting the unknown territories at the edge of the galaxy. Aurora had led countless expeditions into deep space, but this one felt different. This time, they were headed into a region of space that was shrouded in silence, devoid of any known energy signatures or communication. It was as if this part of the universe had been abandoned. Until now. Captain, Lieutenant Alina Parker's voice crackled over the intercom. "We're picking up something. It's faint, but it's definitely a signal." Aurora's brow furrowed. "A signal?" she asked. "What kind of signal?" Alina hesitated, her fingers dancing across the controls as she studied the data. "It doesn't match any known human or alien communication protocols. It's like it's been waiting to be found." Aurora's pulse quickened. "Keep me posted. I want to know the moment we get a clear reading." As the Infinity glided through space, the silence outside seemed almost unnatural. There was no hum of the engines, no noise from the comms, just the infinite, suffocating quiet of the unknown. Aurora stood there for a moment, letting the eerie stillness settle around her. Something felt off, but she couldn't quite place it. Still, her mind was focused. They were explorers. They had a job to do. "Captain," Alina's voice broke the silence again. "It's clearer now. The signal's coming from a planet just on the edge of the system." The crew's interest peaked, and Aurora's attention turned to the view screen. The planet wasn't like any they had encountered before. It was small, barely half the size of Earth, and its surface was completely dark. No lights, no signs of life. It was barren, covered in deep craters and jagged mountains, its surface reflecting the cold light of a distant star. "Send the coordinates to the navigation system," Aurora ordered. "We're going in." The Infinity adjusted its course, and the massive ship began its descent toward the mysterious planet. As they approached, the planet's surface remained devoid of any discernible features. No atmosphere, no energy readings, just an empty, dead world. And yet, the signal persisted. As the crew continued to descend through the planet's atmosphere, the feeling of unease grew stronger. Aurora stood at the helm, her grip tight on the controls, her eyes scanning the view screen. "What do you make of it, Alina?" Alina's fingers flew over her console, her expression growing more perplexed. "There's nothing here, Captain. No signs of life. But the signal, there's something strange about it. It's almost as if it's been here for centuries." The ship shook as they entered the planet's dense atmosphere. Aurora felt a chill crawl up her spine. The air felt different, charged, as if something ancient was stirring beneath the surface. A storm raged outside the ship, dark clouds swirling and crackling with energy. As they neared the ground, the turbulence increased, the ship lurching violently. "We're losing stability," shouted Commander Philip Grant, his voice filled with urgency. "If we don't pull up now." Before he could finish his sentence, the Infinity was hit by a powerful jolt. The ship's systems flickered as the storm outside intensified. The lights inside flickered, and the humming of the engine slowed. "Everyone brace for impact," Aurora shouted. The crew scrambled to secure themselves as the Infinity spiraled toward the surface. The ship's control systems went haywire, and Aurora gritted her teeth, fighting to regain control. She slammed her hands on the manual override, struggling to stabilize the ship. The warning lights flashed, and alarms blared. With a deafening crash, the ship made contact with the ground. Metal groaned and creaked as the ship skidded across the surface, sparks flying from the damaged systems. The Infinity came to a halt, its hull groaning under the strain, but they were safe. For the moment. The storm outside raged on, and the crew sat in stunned silence, taking in the enormity of what had just happened. The ship was damaged, but they had landed. They had made it to the planet's surface. Aurora took a deep breath, her heart still pounding. "Status report, Lieutenant Parker." Alina quickly checked her consoles. "We're alive, Captain. The landing gear took most of the impact, but we're going to need a full systems check. Power is down, but we can survive for a while with the auxiliary systems." Aurora nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. There was something more important now. "The signal," she said, her voice firm. "It's coming from somewhere here. We need to find it." Without wasting any more time, Aurora gathered her crew and prepared for the next phase of their mission. She knew they had no choice but to investigate further. Something out there had been waiting for them, and they couldn't leave without uncovering its secrets. "Prepare for an expedition," she ordered. "We're going to find out who, or what, is calling us." The air outside the ship was thick with the scent of rain and ozone, the storm still raging. As the crew donned their protective suits and stepped out onto the desolate surface of the planet, they were met with an eerie silence. The landscape was alien, rocky terrain with deep chasms and strange, twisted rock formations. The sky above was dark, swirling with ominous clouds that seemed to pulse with energy. The crew made their way toward the origin of the signal. As they moved, Aurora couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every step they took seemed to echo in the silence, and the ground beneath them felt unstable, as if it was ready to give way at any moment. Suddenly, Alina stopped in her tracks. "Captain," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Look at this." Aurora turned, her heart skipping a beat. Alina was standing over a large, circular shape embedded in the ground. It was metal, smooth, and glowed faintly with an otherworldly light. There was no telling how old it was, how long it had been buried beneath the surface. "This is it," Aurora murmured. "This is the source of the signal." But before anyone could react, a deep rumble reverberated through the ground. The air grew colder, and a low metallic sound filled the air, a hum that grew louder with each passing second. The ground beneath them began to shift. The crew stepped back, eyes wide in alarm, as cracks appeared in the surface, the earth shaking violently. The metallic object began to rise, slowly, as if it were awakening from a long slumber. Suddenly, the object emitted a brilliant flash of light. The storm above them intensified, lightning streaking across the sky, as the very fabric of reality seemed to warp around them. The crew stood frozen, their breath caught in their throats, as they realized that they had awakened something much greater than they had ever imagined. The artifact was alive, and as the object rose higher, revealing its true form, they could hear a voice, cold, unfeeling, and ancient. "You should not have come here." The words echoed in their minds, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The crew's blood ran cold. They had awoken something far older, far more powerful than they could have ever anticipated. And now, it was watching them. The hum of the artifact reverberated through the ground, and the air around the crew seemed to shift. Aurora Lion stood frozen, staring at the rising structure, her heart pounding in her chest. The voice, the one that had echoed inside their minds, was unlike anything she had ever heard. It was cold, detached, and full of ancient authority. "You should not have come here." The words, simple yet chilling, rang in her ears. Aurora's instincts screamed at her to turn back, to retreat to the ship and escape the planet before it was too late. But it was already too late. They had awoken something, and now they had no choice but to face the consequences. "Captain," Lieutenant Alina Parker's voice was sharp with fear. "This isn't just a machine. It's alive. I can feel it." Aurora's gaze never left the glowing object. The structure, massive and towering over them, was made of an unfamiliar metal that shimmered with an otherworldly glow. It pulsed like a heartbeat, sending waves of energy rippling through the air. The storm above them intensified, lightning flashing more frequently, as if the planet itself was reacting to the artifact's awakening. "Get back to the ship," Aurora ordered, her voice steady but tense. "We need to figure out what we're dealing with, and we need to do it quickly." The crew turned and began making their way back to the Infinity, but they barely made it 20 paces when the ground beneath their feet began to shake violently. Elena stumbled, nearly losing her footing. "What the hell?" Commander Philip Grant shouted, reaching out to steady her. Then it happened. The Earth cracked open, and from the depths of the planet's crust, enormous mechanical arms erupted, rising like deadly sentinels. They were massive, each one easily as tall as the ship, and covered in intricate designs, their surfaces glowing with the same eerie light as the artifact. The arms reached out, pulling themselves free from the ground with a grinding metallic sound that sent shivers down their spines. The storm above them raged with unnatural fury. Lightning crackled through the sky, illuminating the scene with blinding flashes of light. The crew turned and ran back toward the ship, but the mechanical arms moved faster than they could react. A sharp metal claw swiped in their direction, sending debris flying. "Run!" Aurora screamed, her heart racing. The crew scattered, dodging the massive limbs as they struck the ground with crushing force. The wind howled, and the roar of the storm drowned out everything else. For a moment, it felt as though the world was falling apart around them. Grant turned to Aurora, his face pale. "We need to get to the ship now. We can't fight this." "We don't have a choice," Aurora shouted back, determination burning in her eyes. The Infinity was their only hope, their only chance of survival. They had to reach it, no matter the cost. A massive arm shot toward them, and Aurora leaped to the side, narrowly avoiding the blow. The crew was scattered, trying to avoid the relentless attacks. Elena was knocked to the ground by a wave of energy that seemed to emanate from the artifact itself. She scrambled to her feet, but before she could move, another mechanical arm reached down, aiming to crush her. "No!" Aurora yelled, charging toward Elena. With every ounce of strength in her body, she tackled her lieutenant out of the path of the incoming strike. The two women tumbled across the rocky ground, narrowly escaping the crushing blow. "Are you okay?" Aurora asked, breathless. "I'm fine," Elena replied, looking back at the advancing arms. "We need to move now." The crew regrouped, taking cover behind a large boulder as the mechanical arms continued to rise from the ground. The artifact's hum had become a constant vibration, shaking the very air around them. Aurora's mind raced. They couldn't keep running forever. "Grant," she called, "can we use the ship's weapons?" Grant shook his head, frustration evident on his face. "The ship's systems are down. The storm is interfering with the communication and navigation systems. We're on our own until we can get control back." Aurora's mind raced. "Then we'll have to fight. We can't outrun this." She turned to the crew. "Listen up. We've trained for moments like this. We fight back together. It's the only way we get out of here." Elena, still catching her breath, nodded. "We can use the terrain. The rocky surface can slow down the arms. We'll need to create a diversion to get to the artifact." Aurora glanced at the advancing mechanical arms, then back at the Infinity. It was their best shot, but it wouldn't be easy. She turned to her crew. "We're going to need every advantage we can get. Let's make this count. The battle begins." With their plan set, the crew of the Infinity sprang into action. Aurora signaled for everyone to move, and they sprinted toward the rocky outcrop near the base of the artifact. The mechanical arms were slow but powerful, and the storm continued to rage above them, adding to the chaos. Elena and Grant took position on one side of the outcrop, setting up a series of makeshift explosives designed to create a diversion. Aurora led the rest of the crew to the other side, where they could flank the attacking arms. "We need to buy time," Aurora said through her comms. "Elena, when you're ready, detonate the charges. That'll distract them long enough for us to get to the artifact." "Understood," Elena replied. With the charges set, the crew took their positions. Aurora felt a surge of adrenaline course through her veins. This was it. There was no turning back. Elena activated the detonator, and in an instant, explosions rocked the ground. The sound of the blasts was deafening, sending plumes of smoke and dust into the air. The mechanical arms recoiled, momentarily disoriented by the chaos. Aurora signaled her team to move, and they dashed toward the artifact, using the cover of the explosions to conceal their movements. But as they neared the structure, the mechanical arms quickly recovered, lashing out with renewed fury. One of the massive claws swiped down, catching one of the crew members off guard. The man was thrown into the air, landing hard on the rocky surface. Aurora's heart skipped a beat. She had seen this before. In every battle, there was always a price, and this time, it was a life. "No," Aurora shouted, her voice cracking with grief. Grant rushed forward, pulling the injured crew member back to safety. "We can't stay here," he said, his voice strained. "We need to keep moving." Aurora nodded, her face grim. There was no time to mourn. Not yet. They had a mission to complete, and they couldn't afford to fail. With the distraction they had created, the crew finally reached the base of the artifact. Its surface was now alive with energy, crackling with an otherworldly force. It pulsed in rhythm with the storm, as though it were feeding off the chaos around it. "Here we are," Aurora said. "We need to disable it. Elena, can you access the systems?" Elena moved quickly, pulling out a series of advanced tools. She began hacking into the artifact's interface, her fingers flying over the controls. The storm above them intensified, and the mechanical arms continued to batter the ground around them. The crew held their positions, weapons ready, prepared for whatever came next. "I've got access," Elena said, her voice tight with concentration. "But the security protocols are insane. It's like the system is alive, responding to every move I make." Aurora clenched her fists, her mind racing. She knew they didn't have much time. The storm was only getting worse, and the mechanical arms were closing in on them once more. "Keep working," Aurora said, her voice steady despite the mounting pressure. "We're not leaving until we shut this thing down." The final push. The battle raged around them as Elena continued to work on disabling the artifact. Aurora and the rest of the crew fought off the mechanical arms, their weapons blazing. The storm had reached its peak, lightning flashing in all directions, creating a disorienting and deadly environment. Finally, with a triumphant shout, Elena shouted, "Got it. The artifact systems are shutting down." The mechanical arms stopped their relentless assault, and the storm began to calm. The hum of the artifact faded, and for the first time since they had arrived, the crew could hear the silence of the planet. But they weren't safe yet. The artifact was not just a machine. It was a weapon, and the danger wasn't over. As the dust settled, Aurora knew that the battle had only just begun. The storm had finally begun to subside, but the crew of the Infinity knew the battle was far from over. Aurora Lyons stood atop the rocky outcrop, staring at the now dormant artifact in the distance. The mechanical arms had stopped moving, and the eerie hum that had filled the air seemed to vanish, leaving only the faint rumble of distant thunder. But the silence only heightened her unease. It was as if the artifact was merely waiting for something to happen. "Captain," Elena Parker's voice cut through the stillness, pulling Aurora from her thoughts. "I've accessed some deeper systems. There's something here, something more than we expected." Aurora turned toward Elena, who was seated on the ground, her tools scattered around her. The lieutenant's fingers moved rapidly across the small device in her hands as she worked to dig deeper into the artifact's hidden secrets. "What did you find?" Aurora asked, her voice cautious but intrigued. She needed answers, answers that could end this nightmare once and for all. Elena hesitated, eyes scanning the screen in front of her, before looking up at Aurora with a look of awe and fear. "This artifact, it's not just an ancient device. It's more like a living entity, one that has been dormant for eons. What we thought was a weapon is actually a containment system, designed to hold something dangerous." The words hit Aurora like a blow. "What do you mean containment system?" she asked, her heart pounding in her chest. "Contain what?" Elena's face grew pale as she continued to study the device. "The artifact is a prison. Whatever is trapped inside, it's been held here for thousands of years. And I think we've just triggered its release." Aurora's mind raced. She had felt it. Something ancient, something powerful had been awakened when they landed on this planet. But she hadn't realized the scale of what they were dealing with. She had assumed they were simply fighting a weapon, a machine. But now it seemed that they had stumbled upon something far worse. The realization hit her like a wave. The artifact, the storm, the mechanical arms, it wasn't just a trap. They had unleashed something far beyond their comprehension, something that was now waking up. "We need to leave. Now," Aurora said, urgency flooding her voice. "We've triggered whatever was locked away here, and we don't know what it's capable of." But Elena didn't move. She stared at the screen, her face filled with shock. "Captain, you don't understand. The containment systems aren't just designed to hold something. They're designed to harness power, an incredible amount of power." Aurora's pulse quickened. "What kind of power?" Elena swallowed hard. "I don't know yet, but the readings I'm getting. It's like the artifact is absorbing energy from the planet's core. Whatever is inside this thing, it's not just any force. It's something primal." Before Aurora could respond, a sudden tremor shook the ground beneath them, sending the crew members scrambling for stability. A low, growling sound reverberated through the air, followed by a sharp crack that made the sky itself seem to split open. The storm, which had subsided moments ago, began to swirl again with renewed intensity. "This is it," Elena said, her voice trembling. "It's coming. Whatever is in there, it's breaking free." Aurora's instincts kicked in, and she immediately gave orders. "Get to the ship now. We need to regroup and get out of here before it's too late." The crew scrambled to their feet, their eyes scanning the shifting landscape. But it was already too late. The ground shook again, and with a violent roar, the artifact suddenly came to life. Its surface cracked open, sending sparks and shards of metal flying in all directions. A blinding light erupted from within, and the ground trembled with an energy so intense it felt like the planet itself was about to tear apart. "Fall back," Aurora shouted as the crew rushed toward the infinity. But the path was blocked. The very air around them seemed to warp and crack, as if reality itself was bending under the pressure of whatever was being released. From within the heart of the artifact, a figure began to emerge. It was massive, its form shrouded in the light that emanated from the artifact. At first, it was indistinct, a blur of energy and shadows. But as the light began to dim, its true form became clear. It was humanoid in shape, standing nearly 20 feet tall, with armor that seemed to shift and change, reflecting the chaotic energy surrounding it. Its face was concealed behind a jagged black mask, its eyes glowing a deep, unnatural red. Aurora's breath caught in her throat. "What the hell is that?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "That's it. That's what was trapped inside." The creature moved with unnatural grace, stepping forward with a power that made the earth quake. As it advanced, the storm above intensified, lightning flashing across the sky, as if responding to its presence. The air around it rippled, distorting and warping the very fabric of reality. The crew scattered as the creature advanced, its massive hands reaching out with terrifying speed. A shockwave emanated from its movement, knocking several crew members to the ground. Aurora quickly regained her footing and turned to Grant. "Commander, get the ship ready for launch," Aurora ordered, her voice firm. "We need to leave now." Grant nodded, but the creature's presence made it clear that escaping would not be easy. The ship was their only hope, but it was already under attack. The artifact had unleashed something far worse than they could have imagined. And now it was on a mission to destroy them. The creature raised its hand, and a wave of energy shot out, slamming into the ground near the crew. The shockwave sent them sprawling, and Aurora felt her heart race as she struggled to stand. It was as if the very air itself was being ripped apart. "This is bad," Grant said, his voice tight. "We won't make it to the ship with that thing in our way." But Aurora wasn't ready to give up. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to let this ancient terror destroy everything. "We have to try," she said, determination flashing in her eyes. With a roar, the creature advanced again, this time aiming its weapon at the ship. Its hand crackled with energy as it sent a bolt of destructive force toward the Infinity. The ship's shields flared to life, absorbing the impact, but the force was enough to knock the ship off course. Sparks erupted from the outer hull, and the ship shuddered under the strain. "Get inside," Aurora shouted. "We need to take the fight to the skies." The crew ran toward the ship, the creature's destructive blasts still echoing in their ears. Elena, Grant, and the others scrambled to board, but they knew they couldn't stay on the surface much longer. The creature was too powerful, and they were too exposed. As they boarded the ship, Aurora took a final glance at the massive figure below. The creature had only just begun its assault. It wasn't just a force of destruction. It was a force of nature, ancient and unstoppable. And it was coming for them. With the last of the crew aboard, Aurora ordered the Infinity to lift off. The ship's engines roared to life, and the ship ascended, leaving the surface of the planet behind. But as they rose into the sky, Aurora couldn't shake the feeling that they were only running from a battle they couldn't win. The artifact had released a power far beyond their understanding, and they were no longer in control. The crew gathered in the bridge, eyes locked on the view screen as the planet grew smaller beneath them. They had escaped, but the battle was far from over. The creature, the force they had unleashed, was out there. And now, it would follow them wherever they went. "We need to find a way to stop it," Aurora said, her voice resolute. "We can't outrun this. We have to find a way to fight back." Elena looked at her, fear and determination in her eyes. "We don't even know what it is, Captain. How do we fight something like that?" Aurora turned back to the view screen, the stars stretching out before her. "We fight it the only way we know how. We fight with everything we've got." The crew knew the odds were against them, but they also knew that humanity's greatest strength was their refusal to give up, no matter the odds. The battle was just beginning, and they were going to face it together. And whatever was hidden in the depths of the galaxy, they would stop it, no matter the cost. The Infinity raced through the void of space, its engines strained as it accelerated away from the planet. The massive creature they had unwittingly unleashed continued to wreak havoc on the surface. But for now, the crew had managed to escape. Aurora Lyons, captain of the Infinity, stood at the helm, her face etched with exhaustion and resolve. Her crew had made it off the planet, but the battle was far from over. They had awakened something ancient, something more powerful than they could have ever imagined. The creature, the entity, was out there, somewhere in the darkness of space. The storm had only begun, and now the universe was facing the consequences of humanity's curiosity. Aurora clenched her fists as she stared at the starfield ahead. There was no turning back. They had crossed a line, and now they would have to fight for their survival. It was a fight they could not afford to lose. "Captain," Elena Parker's voice came over the comms. "I've been analyzing the creature's energy signature. It's still tracking us. It knows we're here." Aurora's eyes narrowed. "We need to find a way to stop it before it destroys everything." "What about the artifact? Can we use it to our advantage?" Elena paused. "I'm not sure. The artifact systems are unlike anything we've encountered before. It's not just a weapon. It's a force, an ancient one. It's been absorbing energy from the planet, from the galaxy itself. Whatever it is, it's far beyond our understanding." Aurora's mind raced. She had no answers, but she knew one thing. Humanity's greatest strength was its unpredictability. They had faced impossible odds before, and they had survived. They would do so again, "We can't outrun it," Aurora said, determination rising in her voice. "We have to face it head-on." The crew gathered in the war room, the weight of the situation sinking in. The walls felt like they were closing in, the silence between them thick with the knowledge of what lay ahead. The creature was relentless, and it would not stop until it had destroyed them, or worse, unleashed its power on the entire galaxy. "We don't have the firepower to fight it head-on," Commander Grant said, his voice tense. "We've got a few options, but none of them are good. We could try to engage it in direct combat, but that's suicide." "We need to think smarter," Aurora replied, her eyes scanning the room. "We've faced impossible odds before, and we've won. We just have to find a way to outsmart it." Elena nodded. "If we can use the artifact's energy against the creature, we might have a chance. But it's a long shot." Aurora felt a surge of hope. "Then it's a shot we're going to take." The crew worked quickly, every second counting as they prepared for the final confrontation. The Infinity's weapon systems were online, but they were no match for the creature's power. The creature had access to the very energy of the planet, a force far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. They would have to use that to their advantage. The final stand. As the Infinity sped through space, heading toward the creature's last known location, the crew prepared for the inevitable confrontation. They could feel the tension in the air, each member of the crew silently preparing themselves for the battle that would determine their fate. "Captain," Elena called, her voice breaking through the tension. "The creature is close. We're in its direct path." Aurora stood, her eyes locked on the view screen. "Activate the ship's defense systems. We're going to need everything we've got." The crew scrambled to prepare, their minds racing as they anticipated the coming battle. The Infinity's weapon systems hummed to life, and the ship's shields flared with a protective energy. Every member of the crew knew the odds were stacked against them. The creature was powerful, far beyond anything they had faced before. But they would not go down without a fight. As the creature appeared on the view screen, a dark shape emerging from the void, the crew's breath caught in their throats. It was more massive than they had imagined, its form an imposing silhouette against the backdrop of distant stars. Its eyes burned with an otherworldly intensity, and its presence seemed to warp the fabric of space itself. The creature raised its hand, and with a flick of its fingers, the Infinity was rocked by a powerful wave of energy. The ship's shields flared and crackled under the assault, but they held. "For now." "This is it," Aurora said, her voice firm. "Engage it with everything we've got." The crew launched a barrage of energy blasts at the creature, but it was like throwing pebbles at a mountain. The creature seemed to absorb the attacks, its glowing eyes flashing with a malevolent energy. "It's too strong," Grant shouted. "We're not making a dent." Aurora gritted her teeth. "Then we'll have to do this differently." She turned to Elena. "Can you channel the artifact's power through the ship's energy systems? We need to focus everything on that creature." Elena hesitated, but then nodded. "It's risky, but I think it'll work." "Do it," Aurora ordered. "We're not getting out of this alive unless we stop it now." Elena worked quickly, her fingers flying across the console as she hacked into the artifact's power core. The ship's systems hummed with energy, and the room shook as the Infinity absorbed the artifact's energy, channeling it through its own systems. A burst of power erupted from the ship, a brilliant beam of light that collided with the creature. For a moment, it seemed like nothing had changed. But then the creature recoiled, its form flickering, as if the energy was destabilizing it. "The energy's working," Elena said, a note of triumph in her voice. "We're hurting it." Aurora's heart pounded in her chest. "Keep it up. Don't stop." The creature howled in anger, its massive form writhing as it fought against the energy. It tried to retaliate, launching bolts of dark energy toward the Infinity. But the ship's shields flared brighter, absorbing the attacks and turning them into fuel for their own counterattack. The battle raged on, the ship firing relentlessly, channeling the artifact's power into every shot. But the creature was powerful, and it fought with an intensity that shook the stars themselves. "We're running out of time," Grant said, his voice urgent. "We can't keep this up forever." Aurora knew they had one last chance. "Elena, can you overload the artifact's core? Make it explode." Elena's face went pale. "It's dangerous. If we overload it, the entire system could collapse. It could destroy everything." "Do it," Aurora ordered. "We don't have a choice." Elena nodded, her fingers trembling as she initiated the overload sequence. The infinity shook violently as the artifact's power surged. The creature let out a final, deafening roar as the ship's energy reached its peak. And then, with a blinding flash of light, the artifact's power erupted. The force of the explosion sent shockwaves through space, and the creature howled in agony as its form disintegrated. The infinity was thrown back by the explosion, its systems flickering as the ship struggled to regain control. But slowly, the ship steadied itself. "We did it," Elena whispered, disbelief and relief flooding her voice. Aurora stood at the helm, her chest heaving with exhaustion. They had won. They had stopped the creature, and with it, the threat that had loomed over the galaxy. But it hadn't come without a price. They had faced the impossible and come out victorious, not because they were the strongest, but because they refused to give up. As the infinity floated in the calm after the storm, the crew stood in silence. They had triumphed over an ancient terror, a force that had threatened to destroy everything they knew. But humanity had proven once again that no matter the odds, no matter the darkness, they would rise. They would survive, and they would fight on.